So I've been doing this YouTube thing for quite a long time, and in that long time I've given my opinion on about 20 million different shows. And I think that we can all agree that some of my opinions are more valid than others. Back when I started, it was just common practice to basically make fun of shows even if they didn't quite deserve it. I gave a lot of negative reviews to shows either a lot of people liked, or were harmless in their own right, like Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack or Hi Hi Puffy Amiyumi. Although I will say it wasn't all just standard practice. A lot of the time it was me doing the barest of research, or just going off of memory. Of course, this also applies to things that I've given a positive opinion on. I said some good things about shows that probably didn't deserve it. This isn't entirely my fault though. Sometimes shows age poorly in a way that I can't exactly predict, like Shaolin Showdown. And I think that shows that I've unfairly criticized deserve a second chance. One to get a more modern opinion. One by a more competent me, hopefully. This is a series I like to call Animated Appeals. Yes, we're doing another one.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
The shows that we're talking about here are universally shows I've already talked about, but I think they deserve getting a second look. Maybe my opinion has completely changed. Maybe I was just going off a skewed memory. Or maybe I got basic facts wrong. I can't promise that you'll be hearing the opinions you want to hear, but I can promise that I'm going to do as much due diligence as I can this time around. But we need a good show to start with.
Total Drama Island!
Yeah, that'll work. While I've never given a review to this show specifically, I did talk about it in my Total Drama Rama review, where I said some fairly harsh things about the franchise as a whole. I said that the characters were built as stereotypes by design, and that it meant the show wasn't built to have any kind of longevity. All in all, I sounded pretty dismissive of it, and because I did, a lot of people don't like that particular review, and I don't blame you. That is a completely inaccurate picture of the Total Drama series, Island in particular. Which reminds me, before I continue, I should drop a couple of warnings. Number one, I think this should be obvious, but there is gonna be spoilers for this 15-year-old TV show. Gwen and Owen are the final two, and who wins depends on the region. The second warning is that this video is specifically about Island. I have seen Action and I have seen World Tour, and I will be referencing them, but they'll get their own particular video if this takes off. So, let's start with something very positive here. This show is a genius idea. In the 2000s, animation was going through a rough patch, and as such, young people were turning away from it and getting more into reality TV. You could tell how big of an impact this was having as Cartoon Network started dropping cartoons for their own custom reality shows like Destroy Build Destroy or Dude What Would Happen. It was a pretty good time for reality or pseudo-reality TV. I mean, if you liked it. After Survivor in the year 2000, the genie was out of the bottle. And every single network wanted to cash in on these wildly popular shows that required very little in the way of scripting, production, or acting. The History Channel was no longer about history, it was about Pawn Stars. The Sci-Fi Channel was no longer about science fiction, it was about people hunting ghosts, or UFOs. Now, Total Drama Island wasn't the first animated reality TV show that'd be drawn together, which, yes, is going to get its own episode here. But there was a bit more forethought into Total Drama Island. Drawn Together is mostly just a parody of reality TV and its tropes. Total Drama is not only that, but it understands reality TV tropes to basically function as an animated reality TV show. The creators did their research and asked around to find out what young people liked in reality television shows. And I say they hit the nail on the head. Total Drama Island is an elimination show like Survivor, which provides an engagement to watch every single episode, wondering if one of your favorites got eliminated, or how the hell Owen got past the second elimination ceremony. The elimination aspect led to one of the biggest assets to the Total Drama series, and that's, well, the drama. Shows like this are engaging on their premise alone because of the alliances and the enemies that are made. The personalities that will do whatever they can to succeed in getting as far as possible. You have to see the next episode to see how Heather is going to manipulate everyone, if anyone is going to find out about Beth's freaky tiki idol, or why they haven't decided to just fucking eat Owen. Sorry, I really don't like Owen. This was one of the first non-anime series I remember airing in the United States that had continuity, which was super rare before streaming. Avatar beat it to the punch by a few years, but beyond that there wasn't much, which might put this show a bit in the ahead of its time category. Not every kid had the ability to watch every single episode of the show like this. You know, chores, homework, going to a birthday party, all of that gets in the way. And as you miss more and more episodes, continuing a series like this seemed a little less possible at the time. I know that personally, I didn't watch the whole first season on television. I caught pirated episodes of it on YouTube after the fact, and I'd imagine a lot of other people did too back then. Speaking of ahead of its time, this show was a lot more grown up in terms of content as well. In its original Canadian airing, they would use swear words like crap, years before regular show. However, in America, it was a heavy victim of censorship, up to removing every instance of the word suck or freak. But because of the show's nature, they couldn't remove everything, like the pixelated nudity that frequently happened. As we all know, Harold got to see boobies. The reality TV show format wasn't always a boon though. For starters, the show has quite a bit of gross out. It's mostly contained to a couple of episodes, but those episodes are really hard to stomach. I mean, whenever a character is throwing up, we're going to see it, in all of its beauty. This comes to a head in Not Quite Famous, but other than that, we have Brunch of Disgustingness and I Triple Dog Dare You, which is just the remaining characters eating or doing a bunch of gross things in a row. And I will say, this is certainly something that does happen in reality TV. However, it's the main reason that I don't watch reality TV. But points for accuracy, I guess. However, the other big thing here is something that reality TV gets criticized for, even among people who tend to like it. And that's how forced this show can be. Phobia factor is probably the worst for this. The idea of the challenge is for each of the campers to face their greatest fear. Harold is forced to fight ninjas. He bravely stands against them but knocks himself out, and thus he doesn't get a point. Meanwhile, Heather cowers, but because the sumo wrestler she's forced to fight trips, it apparently counts as getting a point. Trent is told that he literally has to talk to the mime, but he runs off and escapes into the lake, escaping from the mime, and that counts as him facing his fear and wins his team a point. But the elimination at the end of the episode is the worst of this. It's probably one of the worst eliminations of the whole series. Courtney has the opportunity to win the game for everyone. If she faces her fear, she gets triple points, but she backs down, and yet it's Tyler who gets the boot, even though he couldn't have possibly won the game for them. This isn't the first time that Courtney was saved out of nowhere either. She would have been gone in the very first episode if Ezekiel kept his sexist trap shut as well. Honestly, the force of God kept Courtney in so much that if Harold didn't rig the votes, she probably would have won. Speaking of which, I love how that's the only episode where they use paper ballots and every single other episode has them voting by speaking to the camera. Owen is kept in the game despite ruining the cooking challenge by literally eating the second round, and Beth is dropped because everyone's superstitions of her tiki idol, which is probably as fake as everything else that Chris has told them. They brought Eva on again just to kick her off again in the very same episode. I'm guessing so they could hit the 26 episode target. Heather is kept in the game due to getting immunity in every single episode, something that in-universe is probably determined behind the scenes. DJ got voted out in the serial killer episode despite everyone hating Heather a hell of a lot more, and her finally not having immunity for that one time. But the elimination that does get everyone up in arms is Lashana, who's voted out because all the losers kept saying her name by accident, including a parrot whose vote counts twice.
Oh, I miss Lashana the most. Oh, it would be so much fun to have her here. Definitely Lashana.
She wasn't even on your team. Like, you could argue from a writing standpoint, they kept in the most interesting characters. Like, Ezekiel was made just to be the first guy to be eliminated. Justin didn't even talk, and he didn't have much of a personality beyond that, which is what the staff learned the hard way in Total Drama Action. And I mean, that perspective does make sense until you realize how far Jeff made it. And the only thing that he does throughout the entire season is hit on Bridget, poorly. Meanwhile, Noah's wit and sarcasm has made him a fan favorite, despite being the third contestant out. Speaking of which, I am being very harsh on a couple of characters, but each of them does have their fans. Even Ezekiel, the sexist nose picker who was made specifically to be eliminated first. No, really, there's an entire sequel fanfiction that centers largely on him, that people tend to think is better than Total Drama Action. I should also give a disclaimer that that's not a high bar to hit. On the other hand, I will say that turning him into Gollum is probably the most backlash that the show has ever gotten. When it comes down to it, the wrongest I was about the show is when I said that the characters were just stereotypes. I mean, their templates were stereotypes. Each of them had a label that I guess was supposed to be a high school stereotype. Tyler was the jock, Duncan was the delinquent, Bridget was the surfer girl. But then again, the labels didn't always apply perfectly. Harold was the dweeb, when the nerd is probably more applicable, and Beth's the nice girl could apply to several characters like Bridget. Noah is apparently the schemer. I guess planning to set out a dodgeball game is technically a scheme. Even with these labels, many of the characters do stand up strong. For the most part, the weakest characters are eliminated first, and as the show goes on, the remainders get more and more depth. DJ, Duncan, Bridget, and especially Gwen all come across as very likable in some way, shape, or form. But let's talk about the standout character, Heather. In terms of greatest animated villains, I don't know if Heather is referred to often, but she really is perfect in her role. I really do think she makes this season. From near the very start, she's quick to manipulate every eventuality into her favor, and as such, she comes across as the most hateable character in the entire series, with how quick she is to get rid of people who cross her. If you watch the show, you're gonna hate her more than Chris. You know, the guy who was literally torturing the campers. That is impressive. And I want to make this absolutely clear, it's a love-to-hate kind of deal. She's great to watch as a villain. She is unlikable in all of the right ways. And the show doesn't make things too dour by basically letting all the campers get their revenge on her repeatedly. I don't know how many times Lashana beats her up. I lost count. It makes her elimination the most satisfying thing in the entire series. Especially because it was Lindsay's dare, the girl that she manipulated all the way through, is eventually what did her in. When my favorites were kicked out, even for a completely understandable reason, I definitely felt it. Bridget's elimination is probably the biggest for that. She was eliminated basically for strategic purposes. And of course, it did ramp up the emotions for when it was for less understandable reasons. It really is easy to feel bitter over Lashana or DJ or Lindsay's elimination. I will say though, as more and more got eliminated, it did make some of the later episodes less engaging. Camp Castaways and Are We There Yeti are rather slow, because there just isn't many characters to work off each other. In the latter, they're in teams of 2, and in the former, Owen is talking to a coconut the whole time. It definitely makes up for it in the final 2 episodes, though. Just seeing Heather get all of her comeuppance really is a great way to pull off an ending. And in the final episode, they did something pretty cool. They let the fans decide who would win, and because Heather isn't a contestant, it's actually a real choice. And as such, in different regions, the series has different endings. A little lesser known fact is that the intern that dies in the last episode is also different between regions. It's the avatar of the highest scoring player of an online total drama video game, Totally Interactive. You don't get that much fan appreciation in most shows, especially at the time. While the series wasn't perfect, I really did enjoy my time rewatching Total Drama Island. It held up surprisingly well, and I was clearly wrong with my initial opinion of the show. So, why did I have that initial opinion? Well, the Total Drama franchise is a victim of overexposure. It really is the SpongeBob effect. Total Drama Island was really well loved. Action, not so much. However, World Tour turned out surprisingly good. But after that, it was rare that you heard something good from the series. And despite that, the franchise had gone on for another decade, to the point of having a Babies spin-off. That is when you know you have critical mass overexposure. The creator wanted the show to have 10 seasons total, but a lot of people were really getting tired of all of the new stuff. I'm gonna hold off on my opinions of that new stuff until we get to them, but I will say, I always had my doubts with this show being able to continue on. Because this show did have a major disadvantage that other elimination shows didn't seem to have. You see, in other elimination shows like Survivor, or even something like Danganronpa, every new entry gives you an entirely new cast, unless it's something like a Champions season or something like that. Meanwhile, both Action and World Tour tried to use the same characters. This leads to problems. Heather was the antagonist of the original series, that's who she was written to be, but everyone knew her true nature, so her use as an antagonist was blunted. They could have tried, but instead in Action, they completely changed who Justin was to try and get the same effect, basically causing the season to run up short. In the 3rd season, they got around this by making a new antagonist, Alejandro, which worked great for that season. But even doing that can only get you so far. The other campers can't fall victim to the new guy's deception 20 times and still look competent. Eventually with a series like this, you have to go with a completely new cast. Even if the characters are strong, well-rounded people, they become increasingly aware of each other's tricks and usefulness, which dulls a very strong asset of this type of show. I was really interested when Revenge of the Island announced a new cast. However, I never got around to watching it as I was dealing with my own projects, and by the time I had the opportunity, people were already saying that it wasn't as good as previous seasons. But who knows? I'm not interested in making the same mistake twice. Not here at least. We'll get to it. It might be a bit, but we'll get to it. However, next time I want to talk about a very different musical adventure. And we'll be seeing you then. Hey, you've reached the end of the video. The names scrolling by right now are of all the wonderful patrons who donated to help keep this channel alive. If you'd like your name in the credits, head on over and make a donation yourself. Also, be sure to check out my Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok for exclusive content and previews of my upcoming videos. I've also got a forum where you can discuss anything that has to do with my content and connect with the rest of the community. To find anything that I mentioned, just visit my link tree in the description down below. Lastly, be sure to subscribe, comment, and share this video with your friends. Oh, and thanks for watching.